day we are born is important. But even more epic than this is the day that we realize why. I help start people's movements. And over the years doing this, working with a lot of movements, what I've noticed was that a lot of movements start with an experience of disillusionment with the way things are versus the way that they could be. And for me, this experience happened when I was on social media, and I started to see images of something called the Oil Sands Project in Canada. Also known as the tar sands, this is the world's largest industrial project. You see, bitumen is a substance that was found just under the Canadian boreal forest. It's a sticky and viscous substance that, when refined, becomes fuel, but only after you rip out the boreal forest and wash the bitumen away from the sand in which it's found. This is an environmentally costly process, which produces 3 times more greenhouse gases than any other crude oil production. Furthermore, refineries reroute natural water sources from springs and rivers and lakes so that they can wash the sand at extremely high temperatures and then allow the toxic waste to be accumulated in what are called tailing ponds, which we see here. Today we can confidently say that this project has deforested an area of the boreal forest greater than 4 New York cities. So yeah, I was getting pretty disillusioned. I was searching for justice in all the traditional places. I went to the governments, to mainstream media, to large institutions. All of the systems which have been placed there that I was told were there to serve the people and the land were totally disinterested in this topic. So step 1 to becoming a movement is allow yourself to be disillusioned with the traditional way of doing things and move on. But once we know what the problem is, and so I was actually quite lost. I'm getting back in there, and I didn't know where to turn, but I was found with a lot of support within my own community, within my own city, by thousands and tens of thousands actually. They called themselves Occupy Montreal, and they were in the millions across the world. From Mexico City to Occupy Berlin, from Sydney to London to Hong Kong, the Occupy movement was the largest decentralized mobilization that the world has ever seen. Their main concern, their main message was that large corporations were controlling and putting power in the hands of a disproportionate few. And so, if it wasn't for knowing that I had so much support from my own community, from thousands of people in Montreal alone that had this vision, I wouldn't have had the courage to go out and search for answers and search for solutions. Because I knew that when I would come back home, I would be met with much support. So step 2, ensure that your fight is right for the people. And so when we have identified the problem and we've met many people who are telling it like it is, it's then time to go and search for people who can tell it as it can be done. So I'd like to introduce you to 4 exceptionally experienced individuals who have created massive global movements and who have been mentors to me, and I've studied their messages and they've brought me a lot of success. So Bob Marley is a reggae performer. He performed a lot of songs about unity, and actually his music prevented a lot of civil wars, not just in Jamaica, but in a lot of nations in Africa. A lot of folks might think that Bob Marley was just a pot-smoking rock star, but the truth of the matter is that, and this is actually a tip, when you empower people to challenge a system that enslaves them, this system will do everything in its power to defame you. And the truth of the matter is that Bob Marley never did hard drugs. You cannot find a video of Bob Marley swearing. He never drank, and actually he was mostly vegan. So in his 1978 acceptance speech of the UN Peace Award, a reporter asked him, Bob, what do you think of the violent liberation movement happening in Angola and in South Africa? And Bob was always very nonchalant in his response. He said, You know, people always be struggling for their rights, for their life, and for their freedom. But then just struggles. You see, direction, that's where we need to pay attention. And I think that the direction Bob is talking about could be different for everyone. It could be nonviolent protests for some, it could be starting an organic farm for others, it could be creating music like Bob Marley did. But how do we know if the direction that we're taking is the right direction? How do we know that we're going in the right place? And I've simplified it to a foundation, which is the heart. Which segues me into the next character. Now, some may think he's a little outdated, but I like to bring him back in this rendition of Hipster Jesus because, quite frankly, I think that Jesus was just a guy who dressed really comfortably, and when he would walk into a room, he would be really well accepted because he would talk about things like love and compassion and how to overcome the trials and tribulations of human beings that we face every day. But more interestingly about Jesus, what I like is that they talk about him as the all-encompassing, compassionate being. And there it is again. The fact that it took someone filled with love to arouse so much change in so many people. So fill yourself with love. Allow yourself to be loving. And I promise that in doing this, you will find your purpose and you will find your direction. During the British occupation of India, British authorities were going to pass a law that was going to allow them to enter any Indian dwelling without permission, that was going to render all marriages invalid unless they were Christian marriages, and that was going to make it mandatory for all Indians to submit their fingerprints to the British authority. Now, a lot of Indians stood up at this moment and said, there's no way we're going to let this happen. We're going to attack them. We're even going to kill them if they dare try such a thing. But then Gandhi came along and he said, whoa, wait guys, hold on. I too want to fight. But I want to fight against their anger. I don't want to provoke it. And so he went on to say that we will not strike a blow, but we may receive them. And it will hurt, as all fighting hurts. But we will not lose. And he was sure about this because he went on to explain that they may torture me, they may break my bones, they may even kill me, and then they may have my dead body, but they will never have my obedience. Martin Luther King saw this as true strength, as he too took the advice of Gandhi and Jesus. And what he concluded was that the most durable power was love, and that in order to acquire such power required immense courage. With this methodology, as we know, Martin Luther King got the President of the United States to sign the Voting Rights Act and the Housing Rights Act, allowing for all Americans to have equal opportunity regardless of their race, their creed, or their national origin. MLK's movement was literally becoming unstoppable to the point where he was undermining corporations and governments because his word was gold. And whatever he would start telling people to do and to mobilize with, they would end up doing. But he had too much courage to stop. And even though he was getting a lot of death threats, he continued to go because, as he said in his last speech in Memphis, was that he had climbed to the mountaintop and that he saw the promised land. And that he was no longer afraid of any man. Now, I don't know how to explain to you where to find such courage, but what I can tell you is that it's not a luxury. It's not even something that's outside of us or exterior to us. It's something inherent in all of us. You see who is poor, you see who is rich, who is weak, and who is strong. So have a little courage and follow your heart. Now, can you believe that a month after the COP21 happened, the global climate talks in Paris, there wasn't one mention of the oil sands happening in my own country? Now, I don't let this faze me anymore because I don't know what it's like to be Justin Trudeau or his panel of advisors. I don't know what it's like to walk in their shoes, but what I do know is that I could walk in mine. And so I did. Well, actually, I took a plane. But I went to a college in India that had been completely 100% solar electrified. Actually, it was the first college in India to ever be solar electrified. And it was maintained, it was designed, and it was put together by rural villagers who never had a formal education. Now, some may say this is weird. How can you do such a thing? You need some sort of engineering background. You need to go to an institution. You need a piece of paper, right? They disagree. I disagree. They gave new definition to the word professional by saying that a professional is someone who is competent, who is confident, and who has knowledge. So with this methodology, they went to Cachimbo, a small village south of Oaxaca. And they asked this village to select women who had these traits of being a professional. They selected Norma, Olga, and Rosa, as we see here. These women took it upon themselves to acquire a passport for the very first time. They got on a plane for the very first time to go to a land that didn't understand their culture, that didn't eat the same food as them, that didn't speak the same language. And after their training, after 6 months, they went back to Cachimbo and they solar electrified their communities. They solar electrified about 100 homes. They did it autonomously, and I call this sustainable development from the ground up. It's something that works, and it's something I chose to join as well. So I'm kind of reiterating step one. Ignore what does not work. Ignore it. Don't waste your time on it. Join and do what does work. So usually towards the end of a journey, towards the end of a hero's journey, when you've acquired knowledge and the know-how and the sacred secrets of distant lands, you come back to your home, you come back to the place that nourished you and that nurtured you, and you share these secrets. And so that's what I did, and I joined a group of ambitious individuals, and we acquired a 66-acre plot of land that used to be GMO corn and soy. And now it's 4 summers that we're rehabilitating this land. It's been thanking us every summer, and we're creating essentially a sustainable community. We got to work, and we started to invite all kinds of people who were interested in this sort of initiative, and we were met with a lot of support. People came up to us with experimental technologies. They said, hey, you should try Earthships. What's Earthships? Well, they're structures that are made of recycled tires. We said, that's a pretty good idea. So we started a Kickstarter. We got the funds for it. And 6 months later, we built an Earthship-inspired solar passive greenhouse, which today is growing coffee, ginger, kale, and some other things. We realized that we needed energy as well, you know, to power our tools and our radios. So we built a solar shed. Basically just a shed that would store our tools, but we put the shed on an angle so that you can also mount the solar panels on it, store the batteries inside, and we said, hey, why don't we make it even more useful? Why don't we grow herbs and spices on the walls? And why don't we capture the water that falls on this roof so that we can then filter it and have autonomous potable water? And today we have all these things. We didn't ask Justin Trudeau for permission. We didn't wait for someone to solve the problems for us. We did it ourselves. Our local community started to notice, and they started to invite us to do workshops and to educate our community on permaculture design, on sustainable development, on how to develop communities. And we've documented everything. We've taken photos, we've taken videos, so that we can provide hope in the same way that I was provided hope by other examples, so that people can see that it could be anyone that can do these kind of things. Regardless of the situation that may arise, regardless of the climactic disaster that you may face, adversity or poverty, at the end of the day, the one thing that will preserve our happiness as social creatures is to surround ourselves with people who are going to provide us with more than just shelter, energy, water, and food, but people that are going to provide us with a sense of belonging, a sense of acceptance. So the final stage to making sure that your movement thrives is to allow your movement to become a community. God bless. Thank you.